Detroit. And she actually came to the State of the Union one year at the invitation of the First Lady. Andra started a business called Detroit Manufacturing Systems. Andra went from 0 employees to over 1,000 employees with the help of the Department of Labor and the Department of Labor's workforce investments. Our workforce investments are a joint partnership of the state, the federal government, and local government. And working together, we helped Andra grow her business. And now she is one of the principal suppliers of the console for the Ford F-150 pickup truck. And as you know, the Ford F-150 is the best-selling truck in America. That's not meant to be an advertisement for Ford. That's just a statement of fact. And it was remarkable because she hired people who were from the community. She hired people who were veterans. She hired people, in some cases, who had a criminal history. And in all cases, she hired people with tremendous talent and determination who wanted to be part of the renaissance of Detroit. People like Andra Rush inspire me. People like Tom Kartsotis, who was in my office about a week ago, the founder of Shinola. They believe in Detroit. And as a result of what they're doing, they are just going gangbusters. And so, you know, one of the remarkable privileges of this job is getting to meet people who are indeed doing extraordinary things. And they do indeed, as I've learned from this job and from my prior job, they come from all walks of life. And they share really a vision for America that the rising tide should indeed lift all boats and not just the yachts. That everyone who works hard in America ought to get a chance to get ahead. And that in this most prosperous nation on the planet, zip code should never, ever determine destiny. And what I really want to talk to you about today is where we've come as a nation, where we were, where we've come, and where we need to go. And I want to share some of the experiences I've had, not simply in Michigan, but across the country, meeting remarkable people. Because the reality is that back in 2009, when the president took office, we were in the worst ditch of our lives. In the 3 months before President Obama took office, over 2 million jobs were lost. There was a conversation, as you well know, about whether the auto industry should be allowed to die. And there was all sorts of challenge around our country. Now you fast forward, just last Friday was our most recent numbers day. The unemployment rate, which was going toward 10% in 2009, is now 4.9%. That's the lowest rate in 8 years. We've now had 71 consecutive months of private sector job growth, over 14 million jobs. In the depths of the recession, there were roughly 7 job seekers for every job opening. Now there's about 1.5 job seekers for every job opening. I went to law school in the Kennedy School because I wasn't very good at math. But you don't need to be a math whiz to figure out you'd rather compete against one person for a job than against 6 people for a job. You look at the auto industry. Last year was its best year ever, completing a 6-year stretch that's the best 6-year stretch since the end of World War II. And so we're making real progress. And the challenge is that we've got a lot of unfinished business because there's no one spiking the football in Washington. And there's no one spiking the football because, you know what? A rising tide, as I said before, needs to lift all the boats and not simply the yachts. And what I have seen in my work is that we can do that, but it's about choices. All too frequently, I hear conversation that talks about technology and globalization and other forces as if the unfinished business of America is beyond our capacity to accomplish. We can't do it. It's inevitable. It's the invisible hand at work. I categorically reject those claims because I have seen business leaders like Andra Rush and others. I have seen government leaders who have come together. I've seen faith leaders and other leaders who have come together around a vision of shared prosperity. People who understand what my parents taught me, that if you blow out your neighbor's candle, it does not make your candle shine any brighter. That for America to be at its best, we all succeed only when we all succeed. These are choices that we make. When we choose to slash budgets, when we choose to underinvest in infrastructure, those aren't inevitable things that we had no choice in making. Those are explicit choices. And we have a choice between racing to the bottom or racing to the top. We have a choice between building higher walls or building a bigger table. And these are choices that I want to talk about today, because I have met with so many leaders across this country who have responded to these choices by embracing a movement that they call conscious capitalism. This coming Friday, we'll be hosting a meeting in Washington with a good friend of mine, Kip Tyndall, who's the CEO of the Container Store, one of the best places to work in America, a publicly traded company. And Kip understands the stakeholder model of governance, which says that shareholders are best served when all stakeholders are well served. When we reject false choices, I either take care of my worker, or I take care of my shareholder, or I take care of my customer, but I can't do all three. They categorically reject that. The conscious capitalism movement is about creating value for all of our stakeholders: customers, employees, communities, natural ecosystems, supply chains. This is what the president said in the most recent State of the Union. This year, I plan to lift up the many businesses who figured out that doing right by their workers or their customers or their communities ends up being good for their shareholders. And I want to spread those best practices across America. That's part of a brighter future. And so that's what we have to talk about. And we see it in the context of the growth that we've had. You see it in the context of where we were, where we are, and where we need to go. And so that is why I am so excited, because you know what? We have come a long way. But in the house calls that I make, I am reminded day in and day out of the unfinished business. I remember like yesterday a visit I took to Detroit with Mayor Duggan, in which we sat down with fast food workers. I met a woman who was a mother of 3. She's trying to make ends meet on a minimum wage that can't feed the family. She's working a full-time job and living in poverty. And the night before I saw her, she actually had slept in her car because she had been evicted from her home because her home was no longer habitable. We can do much better as a nation. And I meet so many people like that. I met a woman in Connecticut. She had just given birth to her second child. Her husband is disabled. She drives a school bus. And because we don't have paid leave, we're the only industrialized nation who doesn't have paid leave. The only choice she had was to take her infant with her on the school bus a couple weeks after her infant's birth. And so all these sick kids getting put on the school bus, in no small measure because their mothers and fathers had to put them on the school bus because they couldn't afford to take a day off from work. And she's on the school bus with her newborn infant, not fully concentrating on the task at hand because she has her infant right behind her. This is the United States in 2016. We can do much better. The fact of the matter is we've made a lot of progress, but our economy is out of balance, with the fruits of the recovery being enjoyed by folks who are already living quite comfortably. And here's one data point. In 2014, the combined bonuses of Wall Street executives, the Wall Street bonus pool, this is just their bonuses, was more than double the total earnings of all full-time minimum wage workers in the United States. It does not have to be this way. You'll hear some people, as I said, say that this is structural, globalization, technology. This is the cost of being able to buy a TV for $200 instead of $400. And again, I don't buy that because I have seen in my short tenure of 30 plus months at DOL that there are no shortage of smart, forward-looking people in our country who make bold decisions and move us forward. There's this movement that I mentioned of those who believe that investing in their workers is one of the best ways to grow the bottom line. And I see it in all the places I travel. I remember the bookstore that I met the owner in Fairbanks, Alaska. They paid above the minimum wage. They were able to retain their workers. The Ace Hardware store in my neighborhood. She owns 7 stores, and she has been able to be profitable because she pays above the minimum wage. I've met so many CEOs who reject the tired argument that higher wages kill jobs or stifle business growth. Instead, they're embracing what Henry Ford embraced: quite a while ago when he doubled the wages of people on the assembly line, understanding that better paid workers are more productive workers who provide top-notch, superior customer service, and that leads to higher retention rates, lower training and turnover rates. That's good for business. I visited last spring, I was in Seattle, visited a great ice cream shop. Anyone from Seattle? Molly Moon's. Molly was already paying her employees a living wage and paying 100% of their health premiums. Now she made a decision to offer them 12 weeks of paid leave. And she didn't do it simply because she's a nice person. She did it because it meant a loyal workforce and the ability to recruit top talent. And she continues to do that. I don't know if you have Shake Shack. Do you have Shake Shack in Ann Arbor yet? Not yet? Too bad. Go to one. Anyone been to a Shake Shack? Oh, okay, so you know Shake Shack. One of the most successful IPOs last year was Shake Shack when they went public. Danny Meyer, the original founder of Shake Shack, and Randy Garutti, the current president. That is a great example of a business model. And we hear that you can't do burger flipping unless you pay your workers low wages and no benefits. They have categorically rejected that notion. One of the most successful IPOs, and they're going gangbusters. And I recently had lunch with Danny Meyer in Washington, and he told me he had just met with all of his senior leadership at their DC Shake Shacks, and he asked them, why are you doing so well? I was told the DC market wasn't going to be able to compete. And they said the most important key to our success was when we paid above the minimum wage when we opened up. They started out at $12 an hour, and they've been able to retain employees, and they're continuing to do that. Costco was a high road employer before high road employers were cool. I still have my Costco card. It's so old that I had hair in it. And, I wish I'm Tom Buy High, Sell Low Perez. And, they've demonstrated that retail big box doesn't have to be a race to the bottom. If you had invested $1,000 and purchased Costco stock in the mid-'80s, you'd be sitting on about $16,000 today. That's more than double the return on investment of the S&P 500 over that same period. I can go on and on with other examples of businesses who understand that when workers have a voice, everyone succeeds. Next time you go get a beer that's from the New Belgium Brewing Company, great example of how they understand that you do well by doing good. Kim Jordan, a real leader who was just at the White House for another conference we had. And, they all are taking a page, as I said before, from the playbook of Henry Ford, who understand, as he said, that if we can distribute high wages, then that money is going to be spent, and it will serve to make storekeepers and distributors and manufacturers and workers in other lines more prosperous. Countrywide high wages spell countrywide prosperity. That is what we're talking about. And these aren't isolated examples. Everywhere I go, I see business leaders combining idealism and pragmatism in new and creative ways. And I'm looking forward this Friday with Kip to meeting with other